You okay? Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the invitation for me and Jered to come and talk about our organization and what we're working on to make our country better, our state better, and even our communities like these more rich and fruitful. So today I wanted to introduce who we are as people and how we arrived at doing this. What we see as the problem in America, political division, and then how we're working to solve that. And rather than you seeing us as experts, because really we did this as a lifelong learner type of journey, we're learning as we put these events together. I want you to kind of see it as a focus group into what we're doing, into our mission, what you think the problem is, and if we're solving it, and how you would make it better. Because our goal is to build a coalition of people, a board, and a membership that all work towards civil dialogue in Arizona and hopefully around the world and in the country. So please, see this conversation as a discussion, and we really are going to get to that right after we kind of introduce our ideas to see what you think the main drivers of division are, and then what you think about our solution to that. First of all, as they mentioned, my name is Carlos. We founded Arizona Talks officially in 2020, but this has been an organization that started all the way in 2013 at ASU. There was about 6 guys. We were eating pizza. We were the college libertarians back then. And we were like, how do we get more people in here? Like, these issues are important to us. We want to talk about education, immigration, gun rights, but we don't get any people to show up and have these discussions. So the next week we got together and we put together a gun rights debate where we invited 2 legislators. We had a moderator from the local radio station, and our group of 6 people grew into a group of 110 people. And then we did that the week after and talked about immigration. And then we did that the week after that and did education. So our group grew out of a mission to bring people into the fold. We know that everybody wants to have these conversations. They're already having them at the dinner tables, at their family gatherings, and we want to bring that public square together. As you will hear from Jered and myself, we have a long relationship of music, politics, and religion. We actually met at church in our church band. I'm a drummer. Jered's a guitar player. And we have this interesting relationship with religion and church. Both of our wives are pastors' kids. Your wife married me and my wife, and is also one of our board members who is here today, Jesse, back there. So anyways, we've always grown up not only just with each other playing music, but also having conversations about, why do you believe what you believe? It started with religion, and then it grew into politics and social issues. So I'll let Jered kind of introduce himself as the programs manager for Arizona Talks. He's the one that's in charge of bringing these speakers together and really crafting the conversation. How are we going to have a conversation about gun rights if we don't actually have a person that cares about the Second Amendment just as much as the person that cares about gun violence at the same table? And so that's what Jered does. He's really good at that. And so please hear from him.
Well, thanks. But I think between Cass explaining who we were, I mean, I don't know how much more we have to say, but as the program director for Arizona Talks, I find it actually, it's interesting. It's easy for me to, get people that I like to hear from, but one of the difficulties is always trying to find the people that I disagree with, and the importance of that, of, finding those voices. And, we have discussions all the time about who those best voices are, and, where kind of our cutoff point of, of where that, the discussion could go a little offline. But yeah, we really try our best to do that. But anyways, yes, like you said, it's actually interesting. A big part of how where this kind of grew out of is a lot of conversations before our church band, before we played music, and Sunday mornings, just discussing politics and religion, and kind of both of our shared focus of like just having real honest discussions and trying to get to a point of having good faith discussions, and really focusing on the integrity, intellectual integrity, and and how do we best make sure that is the focus on public discourse and conversation, and improving public discourse. So that's what we attempt to do.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad Jered talked about the honesty portion, because we have really two values that drive our organization, and that is openness and honesty. We want to make sure that when you enter into a conversation that we're at the same level of like, hey, we have to live with one another. Let's try to solve some issues. I know that you might be far to the right, far to the left, or in the center, but because we have to be neighbors, we have to approach this honestly and in an open way to have the conversation. So we do see the problem as political polarization. And I wanted to share a couple of statistics with you today on the problem and how that manifests itself. We talked a little bit at breakfast with some people, and we talked about race relations and interracial marriages. Well, political division runs heavy, just like interracial marriage and race in general. Today, we see that 94% of people are okay with interracial marriage, but when you talk about political and marrying people from the other side, the survey found 60% of Democrats and 63% of Republicans would now look down at their child for marrying a supporter of a different political party. Okay. 2 in 5 Americans today say that a civil war is at least somewhat likely in the next decade. Nearly 1 in 5 voters said that politics hurt their friendships, family relationships, and nearly 1 in 5 voters said that their politics have hurt their relationship with their partner. Lastly, nearly half of all college students would not room with someone who voted differently than they did in the last election. So we are seeing political division really eat at the fabric of our relationships. And because of that, the relationships manifest themselves into bigger social issues. We are no longer able to be in a public square with somebody that disagrees with us. And so we tend to just go into our echo chambers. Social media and just technology as a whole has really put ourselves into pigeonholes to only hear amongst ourselves. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, because all of the times that I've been in this building has been sharing ideas with people that are with different backgrounds and different beliefs. And so when we experience this, Jered had a little bit of time in Boston. I had a little bit of time in DC where every lunchtime I could go and hear a lecture. Any given night I could go and hear a speaker talk about a particular issue. When we came back to Arizona, we saw little groups that were doing it, but there really isn't a big public space to do this. We wanted to connect everybody to these great conversations. And so what we wanted to come out of today is for that that there's an organization that is trying to tie us all together, whether it be your speaker events, your speakers coming in and talking to people. We want to bring the public to these conversations. And that's where Arizona Talks grew out of. Our main goal and mission is to make sure that the public square for civil debate exists. And we do this by having programs like nobody else, or maybe kind of like what you guys do, where we try to find the best of all sides. I'll give you a couple examples. One of them, and people get mad at this, but one of them was about the opioid crisis. We know that there's a big pandemic in terms of people getting addicted and not being treated correctly, actually being treated like criminals and not being treated like they have something wrong. So we put a thing together where we invited doctors, people that had recovered from addiction. We had personal stories, all this stuff. We had a particular county attorney here a little while ago in Maricopa that did not like one of the opinions of one of the doctors that we invited. He mentioned that maybe marijuana use could be used to get you off of the opioids. Well, he didn't like that because he doesn't like marijuana. He didn't want it pushed. So he called the church where we were having this discussion at. And he said, these guys are trying to push marijuana on you guys. They're trying to push legalization. Do not go to their events. We held strong. A couple of speakers dropped off. Some people got scared, but we had a pretty good showing at our event. The next day, we had a great event. The doctor talked. The next day, I get a call from the Marijuana Dispensary Association that said, we are so appalled that you didn't talk about marijuana enough. And that's where I think we're hitting I guess that's our niche, right? It's not only bringing one side or one agenda, but bringing the best of all agendas together, not really being swayed by one side or the other. Another one was, who here has heard about the gay wedding cake Supreme Court case? So essentially, it's a freedom of religion case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. We were able to put an event together right after the decision was made, where the two attorneys that argued it at the Supreme Court were able to join us, one from the ACLU, one from Alliance Defending Freedom. And this was a moderated discussion by KJCC, the NPR station here. We were able to see each other's arguments. We were able to be with one another. And in the audience, when it was time for intermission, we served cake with only white icing on it. And we were able to talk with one another like this, laughing, talking about our experiences, knowing that we might vehemently disagree on things like morals and fundamental values, but we have to live with one another. We have to be one country. And that's really what we're trying to solve here. Some politicians recently have said that we need a national divorce. We need to just live with the people that we agree with, and we'll make every state a different shade of political party. Well, we don't believe that that was the intention of the founders. We don't believe that that's the vision for the future of this country. We believe we have to live with 400 million other people. And so how do we do that? We create the space for discussion. Do you want to talk about our mission?
Yeah, no, kind of piggybacking off of some of Carlos said there. I think kind of at least what we think makes Arizona Talks unique is, especially in the civil dialogue space, there's, a lot of the groups in there are centrists and moderates, and it's the idea of trying to get the wings, to come to the center, and, the crazy people, out there are driving everything, which is what we kind of find interesting, because actually, honestly, neither Carlos and I are probably moderates. But kind of a big thing, I think, with Arizona Talks is that we're not trying to bring people to the center. We're just trying to get people to the table and just have discussions. Because it's not going to go well for any of us if we just kind of keep going down this road that we've been going in. And no matter how right we think we are, or might even be, it doesn't really, I don't know how much it matters. Like Carlos said, we live with 400 million people in this country, 8 billion other people in this world. And, if we're going to want a better future, we're going to have to figure out how to live with those people that we vehemently disagree with. So anyways, I'm going to give it back to Carlos, but I think we probably want to get to Q&A at some point, just because we're more conversational anyways.
Absolutely. So how do we measure this, right? Like our big goal is to create a coalition here in Arizona first, and then move to the rest of the country, a coalition of people of different backgrounds, of different political views that come together to at least say, we need to have the stage, the public square for discussion, and not only grab the people that are already interested. I'm assuming some of you already have your opinions made up about some of these issues we've been talking about here, but how do we get to the larger public, the ones that only pay attention about once every 2 years or once every 4 years when these things are happening? We have the biggest political year of our lives coming up next year, 2024, big presidential year. More money is going to be spent in this state and really all across the country than ever before on political campaigns. People trying to demonize each other, calling each other names, and trying to divide, using billions of dollars to literally divide our community for votes. We want an answer to that. And the answer is a coalition of folks like yourselves, like us, that might not agree on everything, but we know how important it is to have the public spaces be available. These spaces are available to just a few people that are interested. We want to expand that to be a public service, and that's the service of civil dialogue. You probably think back to one of the times in your long life where you have changed your mind about something. I remember, for example, me, I was raised as an evangelical in an evangelical Christian home. And that was my reality for a long time, even through middle school and high school. I mean, I did evangelism with my mom, coming from the Hispanic community, knocking doors and asking people, hey, do you know what happens when you die? Well, let me tell you, I know I'm just 12 years old, but I know what happens when you die. And so that was my reality. Going into college and being exposed to ideas and books and conversations made me exactly the opposite. I was in college, I was wearing black t-shirts and saying, religion is the end of us all. We got to stop being religious. As I grew, there was moments in my life where I thought I knew the answer, and I was stopped in my tracks by somebody else, a conversation, a book, something that absolutely, Jered was actually some of those. So where I completely changed my mind, or it made me at least skeptical about my position. I believe that is an experience that we need as a democracy. If we don't have that experience where you're exposed to something that could change your mind, I think our country is doomed to be hateful and to call each other names. And that's exactly what we don't want. So overall goal is to build this coalition. I hope that you will join us. And so the big question that you might have before we open it up to questions is, how do we measure that? How do we measure if we're doing our job in making this a better health for our society? You know, how do we know if we're impacting people? Well, we do it. I think we're going to do it in 3 ways. One is engagement. When we do our events, and we have 8 events lined up over the next 2 years, hitting on the Second Amendment and gun violence, criminal justice reform and public safety, education, immigration, all these great topics. But how do we know that just doing an event is going to be enough? Well, we're going to be measuring our attendance. Not only are we involved in the political circle and in the circle that likes to, I would call it the intellectual circle in Arizona that attends these events, but we want to see engagement from the regular public by engaging with people like the Arizona Broadcasters Association, putting these conversations into public media like PBS or the radio. So our goal is to raise our attendance for our groups by 15% this year. That we want to see, as many as 200 people join us or 150 people join us for every single event that we do every single month. We also believe, and this is something that we always disagree on, whether debates are helpful. If you think back to the Biden and Trump debate that they had the last time, where I was so impressed that they didn't have to go to the bathroom after an hour and a half of screaming at each other. But it was not helpful. It only made us scared. It only made us more hateful towards one another. We believe we can add to that conversation by implementing a new discussion-based debate. So not changing the current debate style, but just introducing something else by them speaking about their stories separately, coming to an actual table and having a discussion rather than you go and then I go and then the rules are here. And if you break them, it's fine. So we want to actually host 2 candidate debates, one this year and one next year, knowing that there's going to be a big Senate race. And lastly, we want to grow our membership. We have about 8,000 people on our mailing list that have been coming to events ever since 2014 or 2015. These are people that we see at the education event as much as we see them at the criminal justice or immigration event. So we want to build that group of people that not only come to our events, but get into the membership and want to produce these conversations within their own private circle. So it's a 3-pronged approach. We want to make sure that everybody in Arizona has access to these conversations. So that's our main goal. And we'd love to hear what you have to think about in terms of what is driving political division in America. And then what do you think about our solution? I mean, is having the public sphere enough to better our country and better our civic health? So those are questions that I would love for you to hear from you, because we're kind of doing a focus group right now.
Right. All right. So we're going to open it up for questions. Anybody on the live stream, you can drop your questions in the live chat and we'll make sure to pass them on to our presenters. Those of you watching the recorded version, obviously it's going to be a little bit hard to do that, but feel free to leave a comment and just share your thoughts on the discussion so far. We love that kind of engagement. So, all right. So let's go ahead and open it up. Do we have any questions in the room for our presenters today? There we go. Let's get started over here.
How does this differ from Braver Angels? I signed up for that, but have not seen any events in Arizona.
Does that mic work over there? All right. Is it kind of bound up?
Check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just thought it'd be a little bit easier. So we don't
Oh, wonderful. I'm so
back
glad you mentioned them. So Braver Angels is an organization that is also doing this. You can hear me okay? Similar things to this. We also work with groups like Make America Dinner Again, which reminds me of Braver Angels. They bring people together to have a potluck with a group of 10 people and have a discussion about current events. And they really help them to set that up. There's about 20 to 25 organizations that are working on this. But what we have found is that running an event every month or even every quarter, as many of you have probably experienced running an event here, is a lot of work. Hosting it, promoting it, making the speakers happen. I know that Kat is doing a lot of stuff on this, so we love Kat for that. So yes, give it up for Kat. it's so hard to keep it going. And so when we come up to, okay, what is everybody doing? It's like one event far in advance or past. We don't see these things happening all the time. But what we have discovered is that when you look at the chambers of commerce, when you look at the Humanist Society, when you look at all these other groups, they're hosting their own events, and it's usually really good content. So what we aim to do is to be the fountain, like the connection point. So whether you're having an event or Braver Angels is having an event or ASU is having an event, we want to bring it all together and send it out to the public.
Yeah. Actually, I just attended a Bravers Angel event earlier this week. Actually, they do great work, and I don't know if your question is if we're different from them. I mean, either way, I think we're all trying to do great work. Bravers Angels definitely. I think their whole thing is getting blues and reds together and having discussions, which is very, very important work. With civil dialogue. Part of what is kind of different about us is that we are more focused on civil discourse. We're not really trying to get the public to have individual conversations, which is very necessary, and there's a lot of really good groups doing that. Actually, one of them being the Institute for Civil Dialogue. It's they're kind of teamed up with ASU. But yeah, I mean, part of what we do is we have usually political leaders, business academics kind of come in and discuss with each other and to an audience. But yeah, did you say Bravers Angels? You haven't seen any events of theirs? Well, yeah, we know some of them, so we'll try to see if we can have them get a little more public about it, because I know they do have events. In fact, I think I can't remember what they have, something coming up here, so we'll chat with them. But yeah, we're all doing good work, and we need to continue doing that work. So thank you.
All right. Do we have more questions in the room here? No. Yes, we do. We got one over here, and then we'll come back to Kat there. So.
I think maybe this is more of a comment that, I'd love to hear your perspective. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges is being triggered. And it's triggered by words. So when you chose to say gun rights versus gun laws, I was triggered. And then I was like, now I'm like, okay, I'm listening through, I have a judgment, and, it affects how I listen. So I feel like, we've gotten to a point where words are so powerful. Everything about race now falls under critical race theory. People don't even know what it means, but it's so convenient to kind of lump everything into one category. And so I guess my point is, I feel like it's one thing to, have a debate. We disagree. Let's see if we can hear each other. But it's hard to hear when I hear words like put women in prison for having an abortion, in some states. I mean, that it has gotten to that point. It is so contentious, and it has a lot to do with language. So I'd love to hear your response to that.
I love that because, two points on that. One, what we try to do is make sure that people are hearing each other. Sometimes because it's a bit painful, we tend to not hear from those people. What I like to go by is the overturn window. Has anybody heard about the overturn window? So basically, it's a political philosophy that explains where things are. The Overton window. It explains the where society is, what is allowable. So before, a Republican used to be a McCain Republican, but the overturn window has shifted now to what a regular Republican now might be a Trump supporter. It goes the same for the left. So the window is always shifting, right? Sometimes, and we had a great conversation with Kaz beforehand, the opinions that you hear are so offensive that they're not even realistic. We were talking about flat earth theory. Why should we give them a space? But coming to debates where like you hear about gun rights versus gun laws, or abortion versus, I don't know, the right to life or something like that. I think that those situations have to be heard, because within the Overton window, most people believe in that. So if you're living next to somebody that believes in gun rights over gun laws, it's better for you to have that conversation and understand where they're coming from, because they're seeing it way differently than you are, and trying to understand them is the best thing that we can do. Not to try to convince them or anything, but to try to expose them to your view. Why do you see them as gun laws rather than rights, and try to have them understand that, because on the other side, they don't understand your point of view at all. So we're trying to also expose them to things that they might think is offensive. I think we have to be brave enough to be willing to be offended, especially when you come into a conversation about a very contentious issue like abortion or gun rights. We must do it, because if we don't, we're going to only be in our groups, and we're not going to be living together. We have to be one country and understand that there's going to be people that you completely disagree with, even on moral basis.
Alrighty, we have a question from the live stream. I'm going to pass off to Kat to get that question.
Yes, Sammy, one of our Zoom attendees, and this is probably for each of you to answer in turn. What has been your favorite topic or event so far?
You want me to go first? Oh, man. Okay. I would probably say, well, I'm not allowed to give two. So I've already mentioned one, and it was the gay wedding cake event. We had groups that were so offended that the other side was going to be there, that told us we're just not going to participate. That's all right, but we still had to have it. Not only was it fun and people of different backgrounds sat together, but I think we accomplished something that nobody else put together then, and that was a true space for dialogue, where you got to hear from the people that actually argued it at the Supreme Court. Most recently, though, or actually a little more in the past, we had an event called God in Politics, where we had people of different faiths come up into like an open mic situation at a coffee shop. And they said, hello, my name is so-and-so, I'm an atheist, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Muslim. And they talked about how their faith or their lack of faith impact their political beliefs. Again, we're not trying to convince one another. We're not trying to put debate like head to head. We're trying to build understanding. You know, how can you as a person, and Kaz, I keep thinking about our conversation, when you meet somebody so smart and so put together, and you're like, how can you believe this? That is the moment we want to create, because yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to create there.
Yeah. So I think one of my favorite ones I've helped put together here was last year. We put together, it was more of it was kind of a general civil discourse, civil dialogue, discussion, but about the elections. And it was an interesting one. So I think Carlos and I, we're both we actually are very cognizant of putting together people that we disagree with, almost more so than we agree with. But anyways, for this one here, we had, it was, I want to remember, it was Katie Hobbs. Carlos might be able to help me out with this. Katie Hobbs, Stephen Richer. Who else was as, the data guru. Mayor Giles from Mesa. So anyways, it was 4 out of the 6 speakers were Republicans. And it got really interesting because it was one of the, part of why it was my favorite, maybe it's just my ego, because it was suddenly we kind of realized that we were a thing and people were paying attention. We got some media buzz a little bit, and it was basically, well, yeah, we were part of the George Soros cabal, but yeah, no, and Carrie Lake actually tweeted out this article, but it was really, actually, part of it was really interesting is that, what we have an advisory board, and we're all over the map, intentionally so. And one of our, people works with some Republicans, and they actually we'd gotten a message from her right before, our event, saying that she was getting into some issues with her fellow, with some Republicans about our event because it was too liberal, which we found very interesting because it was, like I said, 4 out of our 6 speakers were Republicans. But anyways, it's probably one of my favorite. And maybe also because, like I said, we found out we were actually being listened to, which is great. But it's also, it shows that we need, our public discourse right now is insane, and we need to figure out how to kind of get, I don't want to say get back, because I honestly don't know if we've ever been not insane in our public discourse. So I have a degree in history, and it doesn't mean I'm an expert in it, but I've read plenty of our history, and there's throughout all of it, we definitely have had issues the whole time, but hopefully we can just continue to get better. And I think in that, with that event, it felt like we're at least on the right mission and trying to do so.
And I just want to add that the people that are attracted to this kind of mission is a type of person. There are people out there that are never going to want to see the other side. There are people out there that no matter how much exposure you give them, they're still going to think that the person sitting in front of them is trying to make the country a worse place. We believe that most people aren't like that. That's an assumption, but we believe that we can bring people together. This is a startup nonprofit, so this is what we want to be doing. In these last few years, we've worked on campaigns to be able to pay the bills as professionals, and we've worked on campaigns that bring people together. I'll give you an example. Prop 308. Does anybody remember that? This last election, Prop 308 made it so that anybody that graduates from an Arizona high school and has been here for 2 years or their life, can get in-state tuition, to pay in-state tuition. Not to get it, but to just pay in-state tuition. This affected a lot of the dreamers that have been here all their lives and now have to pay out-of-state tuition, even if they graduated from here. So they're leaving the state. We were able to get a coalition of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, even non-political folks, to come in and advocate in those particular areas. We believe there's more things to work on that we all agree on, then there is the things that we completely disagree on. And so we like to focus on those things. Even though the controversial issues are fun, we also want to work on what are the things that bring us together. Outside of the nonprofit, that's what drives us.
All righty, got another question over here. Did you have
Yes, thank you for being here. I think that one of the thing that drives these political differences and why they can get so intense and violent even is because they're based on fear. We humans have the ability to imagine a story, and so we put together a story in our minds about how life should be and how we're going to have a good sense of well-being. And then other people have a different story. And it's too bad that we're limited to discourse, because people really learn from experience, not from talking. I mean, the real things about life. And and your example of being raised as a minister's child and coming up, I mean, you had a story that gave you comfort about what was going to happen after death. And that story did not lose its vigor in you because someone argued against it. It lost its vigor because experiences you had through college and just in your life, what you learned from experience, that story no longer held together. And unfortunately, so you see my point, to resolve these issues requires experience more than dialogue. And I wish I could tell you how to do that, but that's where my, but I think to bring people, I mean, if you took the most diametrically opposed political, religious, even terrorists, and put them in a situation in which they were dependent on each other to survive, they would instantly have each other's backs. I mean, all these differences they would be brothers. And so the issue is, how do we keep potential brothers from killing each other?
That's a great point. I guess maybe, I don't know. I think the way we see discourse actually, I mean, you can't really have discourse without experience. And I think that's a big part, honestly, a big part of what we do and how we, with our events, is we don't really have people debating. We'll have people come up and talk for 6 to 8 minutes. But one thing we do tell them is important is to actually talk about themselves, how they got where they're at. Because that is, I mean, that is a big part of discourse. we can't just leave it only to, intellectual ideas. But I mean, that is part. I mean, most of us change our. I mean, I think most of us change our minds through both of those things, through our experiences, and it's also reading other people's experiences, which I mean is ultimately just discourse. But yeah, no, I no, it is very important that we focus on our own experiences, and within our discourse. I mean, that's what we have.
Yeah, you're totally right on that. And let me give you an example of what actually happened at our most recent event. It was about education and the future of education in Arizona. I don't know how many of you are involved or know about the contention, the real big contentions here. There's a side that really wants public education to flourish, but there's a lack of funds. There's another side that really sees school choice and going to more private options as the way to move forward in our future and over education. These groups are at each other's throats, whether it be putting ballot initiatives down, whether it be running buses with signs on them talking about the other group and how hateful that other group is. Like, there's a vigorous fight in education. The way we featured it wasn't to put the teachers union on one side and the Goldwater Institute on the other side. It was more than that, to bring these particular speakers, because we did have both of them there. We had somebody from the legislature on the education committee. We had the Goldwater Institute, which is very much to the right of this issue. We had Save Our Schools and the teachers union on the other side, which is they're very left on this issue. The way we wanted to feature them is not to give them a leg down by the time they get up to stage, not by saying, hey, this is the conservative guy, convince us of why you're right. It was more that they went up there and they said, hello, my name is so-and-so. I'm a dad. I have 2 kids, and this is the option that worked best for me. People from either one side or the other looked at these people first as parents, as teachers, as advocates, and then as whatever side that is. So part of our thing is to try to disarm people with their experience. So disarming people by not putting them head to head right away. If you had 2 of these podiums facing each other, you'd be expecting a fight, a back and forth, and that might not be the most helpful thing. That is why we think our debates in our candidate debates should be changed to more of a discussion forum, because it's already to begin with very confrontational. So anyways, the way we tried to fight that is by highlighting their experience over their side. This is a person, not a political side.
Oh, all right.
Oh, and we do it at a brewery most of the time. So that helps.
All right, we got another question here.
Thank you very much for coming. This is very interesting. And you just answered most of what my question was about, because it's not questions. I assume that I wanted to know who creates your questions, or who creates the dialogue that's going to happen. And if that is given specifically to the speakers who are coming, and are their answers timed so that one person can't spend 20 minutes versus, and is that known in advance? And then how do you handle questions from the audience afterwards? Thank you.
Great questions and our format. And I'm so glad to have the program director here, because he's the one that puts it together. To just start it off, and I'll hand it off to Jered, is our board of directors really guides the organization. So we have, for example, the chairwoman of the Maricopa County Democratic Party, next to the communications director for the Republican Party of the state, of the GOP, next to somebody from Goodwill, next to somebody from the chamber. So these are people that already have disagreements, that want to check each other. Like, hey, are you making this question too easy for the speaker? And it actually works as a check and balance in having the board lead on the topics and the questions to begin with.
Yeah, and on the program directing side, so we really try to do our best, and we're still evolving and trying to figure out best practices and all that. But in our advancement emails that we send, we send them to everybody, so they all kind of know who's on, who else is speaking, and have an opportunity to say something to each other if they need to before. But we try to set it up in a way to really to try to get the best conversation. He says best sides. I don't know if we're really bringing best sides or not, but we try to bring the best conversation that we can. And just letting them know that focus on we focus on civil discourse, but also trying to at least get them in the direction of intellectual integrity. Make sure you say what you're make sure what you're saying is accurate. Don't don't attack the person, present your ideas. So we really try our best to make sure that we are putting out a platform where that can happen. And it's, in all fairness, it doesn't always. We definitely have had some moments, and sometimes, to be honest, those moments actually work for us. We've had audience members yell at people, and it gives us a little break in action to kind of remember what we're doing and to show that we aren't at a we're not at a point of we're at a point of contention, and we need to get better, and it allows us to kind of work on that. So, yeah.
All right, we got another question here.
You mentioned some of the statistics around how these issues can negatively affect families and friends. What advice could you give us to help promote civil discourse with our families and friends and being able to have these conversations without ending up shunning each other?
I love it. We've always heard the rule, no politics or religion at the table. I would say throw that out the window, because you're going to have to live with these people. I mentioned the hypothetical of living next to somebody that you'd completely disagree with on gun rights. What if that person was your dad or your brother or whatever? To avoid it is not the answer, because that only grows into something bigger, and it could grow into resentment, hurting the relationship. I think my biggest piece of advice is know that people disagree with you and be okay with it, because I know sometimes our beliefs are deeply held in our experience, in our faith or lack thereof, in our really characteristic beliefs. Just know that we have to live. Living in a democracy means that you have to live with people that disagree with you and have the conversation. Don't shy away from it.
Actually, so it's interesting. Coming from a church background, I think everyone here is aware that a lot of times the thing that people preach on the most are what they have issues with the most. And so I'm actually one of those people. I'm not the best at, civil dialogue sometimes. And I've been working most of my life trying to get better at that. And, kind of getting in, stories or whatever. I've had those issues. I have had relationships with families that that got broken up early on, and I wish that wouldn't have happened. So yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest part is is whether it's your family or or just ultimately public and discourse and told. It's like, we just have to get better and not try, and keep relationships with people that we should have. So, and just try to be always cognizant of that. And also just having humility. Chances are none of us are really, we don't know much about anything. And, there's chances that we're, pretty decent chance that a lot of us are wrong. And maybe the person, in front of us might not be as wrong as we think they are. And we're not as right as we think we are. So just try to do our best to keep that in mind when we're having conversations with people. So.
Yeah, I would call back to openness and humility. Those are the two things that really guide what we do. And the experience of being at an event, hearing from speakers, as you've probably already experienced, you build community just on that, even if you disagree with one another. And so we get a lot of people that say, we stayed at the place or at the brewery hours after talking about this issue because you put that thing together. That's the power of a public space to discuss this. Our ideal would be to have these all the time. I mean, it would be awesome to have 2 or 3 events a week where the public can come and experience this. We're working to build that. We're working to build that infrastructure where it's not only one organization doing all the events, it's a coalition of organizations that have events going on all of the time, engaging the public.
All right, we got time for a couple more here, so let's come over for a question.
A quick observation. First, the Alliance Defending Freedom to discriminate. That's what I see about the education forum. The thing I see is that money for public schools to make the public schools better in any way is being taken to the private schools, which are often religious. And that's a problem no matter what you believe.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. On the Alliance Defending Freedom, the gay wedding cake thing, I believe Alliance Defending Freedom won that case for religious freedom or whatever. On the education side, there has been ballot initiatives for education choice or actually legislative issues for education choice and ballot initiatives to go the other route. The reason why we have to have them at the table, in our opinion, is because they're making change happen. These are the organizations that are changing laws, that are changing our dialogue. So we have to know and try to understand where they're coming from, even if we disagree with them.
Yeah, sorry. And also to maybe not answer your question. I just want to, I promise you that Carlos and I are very opinionated people. But also at the same time, Arizona Talks as an organization, we are not, we're focused on not, taking sides on an issue. So it's kind of a hard question for us to answer, especially on a stage for talking for Arizona Talks. So yeah, I just want to kind of point that out a little bit.
Yeah, we certainly don't promote any side, but we know that the public has the right to understand the side that is making change, even if you don't agree with them.
All right, got time for one more over here. Okay, we'll get to that one too.
I have a question about misinformation. There is so much public misinformation. I'm wondering if you try to mitigate that before your speakers speak, or if a speaker should get up and get off on a tangent that may not be correct. Is there a way you mitigate it, or you just step back and see where the conversation flows?
Yeah, no, I love that. So that is one of the problems that we have, in trying to be in the public discourse square. Like I said, so I think I said this earlier, like I send an email to those people and we try to chat with them before and kind of tell them who we are. And one of our focuses is like saying, make sure what you're going to say is accurate. Now, once they're on stage, we're not going to go pull a hook on somebody if they're like saying something that is inaccurate, or even if we might want to, because we just, in some ways, it's just whatever, let it out. And then honestly, what gives them the most ammo is when somebody from the other side just says, calls them out for being stupid. I mean, here's the problem is with misinformation is that a lot of times they know it's misinformation and it's just a tool. So, and they're just trying to get your goat, trying to get that reaction, because then they get to create more division. I'm not a fan of it. I don't, and I definitely, like I said before, I have my own opinions on this stuff. But as an organization and trying to further, civil discourse and, hopefully, a little bit healthier, better civic health. Yeah. As far as I mean, we don't pull the hook on anybody, but we do try to get people that we hope and believe aren't going to just purposely deal with that. Although it does happen. So,
So the way that a regular program goes, there's two things that try to mitigate for that. One of them is we have a informational part of the event where we have almost like an introduction or an MC that talks about the background for that topic, whether it's immigration or education, whatever it is. We have somebody explain where we're at with the issue and what the disagreement is, so that at least everybody in the room is at the same level when you hear certain terms. The second thing that we have to mitigate for that is we start with stories, and so that you get to see the perspectives of these people through the lens of a human first, and then we go into question and answer. Because we know that question and answer can get a little iffy and people not actually asking questions, we pre-select a lot of our questions, whether it be from Twitter or from people that we want to hear from, our board members that are going to drive that discussion forward. So we really do moderate that question and answer period, because we don't want somebody to give a speech from the audience. It happens. It has happened.
I didn't get a question up here, and then we're going to go to our online live stream question.
Hi, I'm Anita, and well, I've been with the Humanists for probably 15 years. I live in a neighborhood that is very heavily Christian, and I've gotten into conversations with some of them. The first one had asked me, I was having some problems. She says, "What's your relationship with God?" I said, "I don't have one." And then I started explaining to her, I have come to believe in mutual respect. It's not going to happen universally, because we're human and we can't all agree on everything. So what I tell them is I'm a secular humanist, and I respect your right to believe whatever you choose. And in return, all I ask for is the same respect from you. Because religious people, they're dealing with something, what I view as supernatural. And you can't argue with that. And I don't want to. I don't want to proselytize. I don't want to change anybody's belief. I was talking to a woman yesterday, and we had a very long conversation. And she's looking forward to when she dies, she's going to visit her now deceased mother, who no longer has Alzheimer's. I'm not going to try to tell somebody that most likely is not going to happen. So that's my take. And humanism has done wonders for me. It's changed my attitude towards people. I used to be very argumentative and anyway, impolite. And I believe that mutual respect and education, the right education, if it could ever possibly happen, is really the answer. Too simple, but I don't know. I don't think it's unattainable. You know?
No, and you talk about this the way we see it, not only just how you view religion, but like how we should view maybe even gun rights. I know we keep going back to that, or immigration, right? There's people that have certain experiences, going back to experiences, that doesn't allow them to have a different position. We might not want to change that. What we want to do is be able to live with one another, for them to be able to see you and for you to be able to see them and say, hey, I get you. We don't agree, but we live in the same place. Like, we care about this country. You're not going to hurt. Your intention is not to hurt. I think not everybody agrees with it. I'll go back to what I said. There's people that are just not going to get there. I believe, just based on their character or their background, whatever it is, many, many factors, but we have to then coalesce with the people who are there, right? There's atheists, Christians, and everything in between that care about this one value, and that's mutual respect. And I think that would be great if we could coalesce around that. Oh my gosh.
I love what you had to say in the question there. I want to take my Arizona Talks hat off just for a second, because this is not from Arizona Talks. I find myself in sometimes an interesting position, because I consider myself a secular humanist, but I'm also a Christian, albeit with a ton of asterisks. And I think that's, what you're kind of talking about. We talk about trying, maybe not changing people's minds. I don't know if I'm certain. I think what I would like to change people's minds is, not necessarily, trying to convince them to be religious or not religious, or whatever that religion is, or, whatever that thing is. It's just more about valuing the other people and having a little more humility to understand that none of us know what we're doing. I mean, we really don't. I guess I can't know that, but, so I liked your question position, but yes. So anyway, I had something else to say, but I can't remember what it was. Maybe if I remember it, I'll say it.
All right. We got a question from the live stream we're going to go to here. Kat.
Yes. Do you both do this in your spare time, and do you need to pay the speakers, or do they participate for free?
That's yeah. So basically, because we create that public space, we believe that it is an addition not only to the public, but to the speaker themselves, to be able to have a space in that public sphere. So we don't pay speakers. We've never paid speakers in the years that we've been doing this, thankfully, because our network is enough. And our network of people like yourselves already have events going, already have connections to speakers to be able to bring them to our program. So we don't pay the speakers because they get a big platform to spread their ideas on. And in terms of living this, like I said, we've had to go into the political field and actually run some campaigns to be able to be at this spot where we're now just focusing on Arizona Talk. So like I said at the beginning, look at us as a startup, as a nonprofit startup, to make the public discourse in our state better. And that's the mission. We're starting this year, and we'd love to have you all along with us.
Yeah, I would like to augment that a little bit. Yes, we don't pay our speakers yet, but we have chatted about this a few times. We would like to get to a point where we had the funding and all that to maybe to get some, to be able to pay to get some national speakers in, or if we saw that fit. But yeah, on the other part, yes, we've had other jobs, but we would really like to focus on. I think this is probably the most important issue, besides campaigns and all that stuff. And so yeah, we are, like Carlos said, we kind of view ourselves as a startup, but we would love to have this actually be our job at some point. And no, it is not right now. So.
I also brought a few pencils in the spirit of being lifelong learners, as I know that all of you are. That's why you are here. Please, come up to us after this and come say hello. We want all the feedback as possible because we really are rolling now. We're talking to foundations, we're partnering up with chambers, we're doing a lot so that next year, the biggest political year of our lives so far, we are rocking and rolling every single month doing something, whether it's on TV and broadcast or in the public. So we hope that you're along for the ride with us, and we can't wait for you guys to become partners so that we can also drive people to your events and your mission. Thank you.
All right. So we got one last thing to ask before we kind of wrap up this portion of our presentation here. It's sort of a two-part thing. What events do you have coming up in the near future? What kind of cool stuff is on the horizon for your organization? And how can these folks here and those watching online and those watching the recorded one, how can they get more involved with what you're doing and be part of this conversation that we're having?
Awesome. We have great topics coming up, from the education issue that we talked about and really understanding what the divisions are in education in Arizona, all the way to criminal justice and public safety. I could talk about all these issues and the differences between them, but as you know, these are complex things. We're talking about housing, we're talking about water in the desert, we're talking about the Second Amendment and gun violence. So all things that are current, that are on top of people's minds, especially now with what's happening with people getting shot. I think this is something that has brewed over into our country, and the conversation needs to happen. Many people are afraid to host a gun rights versus gun safety conversation. We can't be scared. We have to be out there in the public. These conversations have to happen, because if not, it grows into hatred, and that's what we're trying to fight. Yes. Oh, go for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. ArizonaTalks.org. So pretty simple, as long as you can spell. There you go. He's got it. Anyway, one thing I would like to add. So besides public events, which we don't actually have anything officially on the table right this minute, we're definitely in a handful of discussions as far as putting stuff forward with housing, as Carlos said, hopefully water at some point, because that's an extremely important issue for Arizona. And we're actually in some talks with a couple different groups about doing some discussions about ranked choice voting. But the other part of that we do, which gets it's a little more under the table. We do other events that are more private, because we do try to get, leaders and, people that actually push things together. And that's a little bit more on the private side of things. So we have things called Jeffersonian dinners, where we have people come in and try to have real discussions, and we have moderators. And so, we do work besides just our public stuff, which is kind of what we can kind of focus on now. But we're also, like I said, we are working with a few different groups of trying to put some events together on those. So hopefully be looking forward to those soon.
So our cadence at the moment is about an event a month, some sort of experience. We're hoping to grow that so that we're doing something every single week, not us host it all, but have the network to lead people to events like this every single week. That's the goal that we're trying to get to this year. Oh no, I was going to cut you off. Okay. Oh, okay. All over the valley, we're doing stuff in Flagstaff and looking into Tucson, and we're building up to do that on the regular basis. That's why I think this is the perfect time to start, because we're a year away from all of the political craziness starting. We already want to have a base of people that agree we should talk about the issues, not people, in the next election.
Yeah, no, I'll admit, one of the biggest things kind of, pushing as far as how many events we can get out there or not is the fundraising part, which we kind of discussed. Part of it we are somewhat proud of, but we get in trouble a little bit with fundraising, because a lot of times what will happen is groups from one side or the other will they're all on board. They love us. They're going to give us some money, and they find out we're, some other group that they don't like is going to talk. And this has happened numerous times. So we kind of lose funding from that. But it also, we kind of it's kind of funny, but we believe that means that we're on the right page, and we have faith that that's going to, you just used the F word. No, we believe that we're on the right track and things are going to happen. So
awesome. All of you can become our followers, just following all of our social media stuff. It's just Arizona Talks. You can become a member where you get an email every single week with all the events that we're putting together and connecting with. And then you'll get invitations. He mentioned it a little bit. Has anybody attended a Jeffersonian dinner? Does anybody know what that is? So a Jeffersonian dinner is about 10 to 20 people max. And it is a roundtable discussion with a moderator that tries to answer a question that night. Jefferson and, politicians and people of the state have been doing these throughout time. Sandra Day O'Connor we're very well known for her dinner parties. So what we try to do is answer a question and hear from everybody at the table. What we've heard is like, wow, I thought I was just coming to listen. I didn't know I had to give my opinion. That's what we're trying to extract with these dinners. If any of you are interested in putting a Jeffersonian dinner together about any topic, we'd love to help put that together with you. The moderator, the venue, you guys have a wonderful building where you do so many great things. And so we'd be honored to work with you.
Follow-up question. Is there food served at these Jeffersonian dinners?
Yes. You have to break bread. At least get a drink in you or something.
Outside of a lot of things that Jefferson was infamous or famous for, it was his dinners, and that was and so it's a whole thing. And he used to invite people, and they just talked about issues. So that's kind of where that started. And so,
all right, well, HSGP, let's hear it one more time for Jered Scrivener and Carlos Alfaro from Arizona Talks. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Kind of stick around because we do a little thing at the end of our program here. So kind of hang out here and we'll get to that. So thank you for making us part of your day, whether you're joining us online or in person. We sure do appreciate you being here. Make sure to follow us on our socials. You can find us on Meetup to be at events like this and have lots of fun with us. And you can always find us at hsgp.org, where you can sign up and become a member and be part of this cool stuff we're doing at the Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix. So thank you so much, everybody.